So what's going on, guys? I'm Black Ops Amazing. Welcome back to another video where today I have something very exciting I want to show you, and that is an old cipher has been solved from Black Ops 3 today. This can be found in the map Gorod, Krovi, and let me just remind you guys that this map came out in July of 2016, so almost 5 years ago now, 5 years after this was intended to be solved, because Treyarch wouldn't have put these Easter eggs in the game. They wouldn't have spent time on these ciphers thinking that half of them wouldn't be solved within a few weeks. And this isn't unique in terms of old ciphers. I think it was about a year ago now where there was yet another cipher solved from BO3, and to my knowledge there are still tens of ciphers left unsolved, especially in Revelations. There's also a few in the Giant and other maps. Treyarch would have expected these ciphers to be solved within a few weeks or maybe months, but definitely not years later. And in a way it's kind of a shame because they're not really relevant now. Most of the time what these ciphers give us is a look into the future, maybe as far as Revelations or even as far as BO4, but now we are on Black Ops Cold War, so the information that they give us, even if any more do get solved, probably won't be as exciting or, I guess, shocking to us since we now have context. So anyway, like I said, this cipher up on screen now can be found in Gorod, Krovi. I just found out about this a few hours ago because a very credible cipher solver, I guess you could call him, within the Call of Duty community is called Rich Killer. He posted this on Twitter where he said, check out the newly solved Ether cipher from the reporter talking about Mr. Rapt and the subjects. So this was posted on Finsternak's Reddit. Hopefully I've pronounced his name correctly. Personally, I don't know much about solving ciphers. I'll leave that to these guys. So if you want to find out how exactly they did it, go ahead and check out their Reddit post for yourself. But when you solve and translate the cipher, this is what it says. Tony Hale Rapt. Now, where have I heard that name before? I just can't remember. Anyway, better get to work as Mr. Rapt has paid me a handsome sum to investigate and gather the people and items he needs. After I'm done here in Morgue City, I have to head to San Francisco to interview the subjects. The idea of being trapped in that prison gives me the creeps. Imagine solving this cipher before Gorod, Krovi came out, because it talks about San Francisco, which of course relates to Alcatraz. It speaks of the subjects. A lot of this information we didn't get context to up until Revelations, even Blood of the Dead, and Gorod, Krovi happened before that, so this would have been much more exciting solving this then. However, it's still pretty interesting. There is information in here that we didn't know. So breaking it down, if you've been staying up to date with the Call of Duty storyline, especially during BO3, you will recognise that this message is from the point of the reporter. The reporter was someone we heard of in Shadows of Evil. He did various different jobs for Mr. Rapt, going to different places such as Morgue City, Siberia, Alcatraz, not only to collect different artifacts, but also to interview people to find out information for Mr. Rapt. And Mr. Rapt, for those of you who can't remember, is the Shadow Man. It is him in disguise, I guess. Mr. Rapt is the name the Shadow Man gave to the reporter, so he doesn't know who he is. Also, I guess because they can't say his name is the Shadow Man, that would just be weird. Anyway, so as always, the whole cipher is on about Mr. Rapt sending the reporter to various different locations to do and collect things for him. But there are a couple of things in here that stand out. The first thing being Mr. Rapt's name, Tony Hale Rapt. We've never heard that before. We only ever knew him as Mr. Rapt. We get his full name here, and what's suspicious is how the reporter says, where have I heard that name before? Well, we haven't. We'd never known his full name up until now, and what I think Treyarch were trying to do here was give us a hint, because another Reddit user called Hey Luda You Like to Eat, he replied to this cipher about the Shadow Man's name and said, if you unscramble Rapt's full name, it is Nyarlathotep. I don't know how you say that, but this is a Lovecraftian god, and in the past we have heard this name because that's what the Shadow Man is said to have been based off. We know the whole thing revolving the Apothicons, the Shadow Man, Dr. Monty, all of the alien-like creatures that we saw introduced in BO3 were all inspired and based off Lovecraft, his stories and his work. If you just take a look at several creatures from HP Lovecraft stories, you will recognise that it's pretty clear to see where Treyarch got their inspiration from for the Apothicons, and what we're given here from Treyarch is an Easter egg for what they based the Shadow Man on. His full name, Tony Hale Rapt. When you unscramble that and then put it back together, you get the name Nyarlathotep. And if we just look this up, this was one of the characters from Lovecraft stories. It was also known as the Crawling Chaos, the Dweller of Darkness, the Faceless God, and the God of a Thousand Forms. Just like the Shadow Man, Nyarlathotep could take on many forms. He could look like a normal person, but his true form was this. And we also know the Shadow Man's true form is this. You can see the inspiration here, and it's confirmed in this cipher because his full name, when you mix the letters up, is the name of this creature from Lovecraft. Just reading a little bit about him because he's so interesting, and there are loads of websites out there that tell you different bits of information. I'm going to read on this one, I'll link it down in the description. It says, Nyarlathotep differs from other deities in the mythos in a number of ways. Most of the outer gods, which is what he is, are exiled to stars, like Yogo Solth and Azolth. I'm going to pronounce a lot of these wrong, and most of the great old ones are sleeping and dreaming like Cthulhu. Nyarlathotep, however, is active and frequently walks the earth, actively seeking to agitate the universe into madness, woe, and discord. He has been known as a manipulative, charismatic, and cruel entity who enjoys bringing chaos to the many worlds he walks. He has 1,000 other forms of manifestations, most reputed to be quite horrific and sanity blasting. While the other mythos gods are often described as mindless and unfathomable, rather than truly malevolent, Nyarlathotep delights in cruelty. He is deceptive and manipulative, deceiving the antagonist of mythos into believing he could grant them power, which he did at the cost of nearly losing their humanity, and manipulating them into becoming his pawns, and even cultivates followers and uses propaganda to achieve his goals. The description I have just read sounds exactly like the Shadow Man. He has many forms, he manipulates people, he turns them into his pawns, cultivates followers using propaganda. That's exactly what the Shadow Man almost did to the Shadows of Evil crew, Jessica and those lot. In the beginning of Shadows of Evil, he manipulates them, he tricks them into thinking that the Keepers are bad and he's good, and he uses them as his pawns, telling them what to do, that the only way they could remove the mark of the beast from their hands was to listen to him, to give him the summoning key. In the end, the Shadows of Evil crew actually figured out that he was bad, but it could have been totally different. That isn't the only instance we've seen of the Shadow Man manipulating people. He did the exact same to Richtofen pretty much throughout the whole zombie storyline. When Richtofen touched the MPD for the first time in Doris and became infected by the Dark Ether, ever since then, Richtofen began hearing his voice in his head, hence why the Ultimates version of Richtofen did all of the bad things he did. It's because the Shadow Man told him to, he manipulated him. It's so interesting to see where Treyarch got their inspiration from for all of these apothecary creatures. And it's something I really liked. I know a lot of people didn't, but the whole alien experience they introduced, especially when you know the background, it added a whole new layer of depth. And when they add Easter eggs like this into the game, even though it's kind of disappointing that it takes 5 years to solve, it just makes it even more better. But getting back to the cipher, because there is also another bit of information in here that's interesting. At the end of this message, the reporter says, "After I'm done here at Morgue City, I have to go to San Francisco to interview the subjects. The idea of being trapped in that prison gives me the creeps." Now, we do know that the reporter did in fact travel to Alcatraz. If we listen to radios that we have in Revelations, he actually interviews the warden, but he says in this cipher he's interviewing the subjects, not the subject, which makes me think he isn't talking about the warden in this cipher. So what subjects at Alcatraz could the reporter be going to interview? Well, there's a few different options. The first one being the Mob of the Dead crew. I think that's probably the most plausible. We do know for Blood of the Dead, which is a long time after Gorod Krovi, it's very possible, actually more than likely, Treyarch did plan that far ahead into the future. They knew about Blood of the Dead and Classified and whatever in Black Ops 4 when they were making Gorod in Black Ops 3 and putting the cipher into the game. They would have planned that far ahead into the future. But as a part of the Shadow Man's grand plan in Blood of the Dead, it involved the mobsters. He needed the souls of Sal, Finn, Billy and Arlington to become trapped in Purgatory. That was all a part of his grander plan to get Richtofen trapped in Alcatraz. So it could be the subjects the reporter is talking about is the mobsters, since they were a part of the Shadow Man's plan. You could say the subjects could also be talking about the transit crew. If I can remember correctly, it's very messy, but they were on ice during the time of Gorod Krovi. I've just kind of answered the question though. They were on ice, so how could he have interviewed them? And then the other option is of course Primus or Ultimus, but they don't go there until Blood of the Dead. Only Primus Richtofen does. So the only option, the only people I can think of he's referring to here when he speaks of the subjects is the mobsters. They're really the only ones that make sense. Perhaps them, along with the warden. Those are the subjects I think he's talking about. So yeah, it took 5 years for this cipher to get solved. In a way, I'm happy. In a way, I'm also kind of sad because there are so many more out there. There are loads in Revelations that I think will be very interesting. Just the couple that are solved in that map are really, really good. Some of the juiciest ones we have. So the fact that there are about 10 more in Rev that we haven't solved, that disappoints me. If it's been that long, you know, since the map came out, it makes me think some of them might never get solved unless Treyarch give us hints. But who knows, maybe another year from now, another 2 years, maybe another 5 years, we might get another one solved. I do want to say though, a message to Treyarch. For me at least, it would be nice if you know, just gave us a hint. Even though we'll probably understand most of them by now, they won't be relevant to the story. In instances like this, they still give us things that we never knew, and it's just a shame to see them go to waste. So there we go. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. As always, hopefully you have enjoyed it. Check it out for yourself. Make sure you are subscribed, drop a like rating, and I will see you in the next video. Until then, goodbye.